I've seen your story around a bunch. I had a fan reach out maybe 3-4 months ago and say, yo, you should get Matt Cox on the show. And I was like, Matt Cox. Then I looked at the Wikipedia page and I'm like, oh, this guy. And the story, I mean, your life has been insane, man.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Unfortunately, but you know what? Like, in a weird way, you end up taking winding roads, and if you take advantage of them in the right ways, obviously, you can end up in a place where you're doing the things you're passionate about. It seems like that's kind of where you're at with the writing and even with the podcast.
Yeah, that's where I'm at now, but it was, definitely a long road.
Long road to get there.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, like I said earlier, you know, it's not like something happened to me. You know, it's like I brought all of it on myself. So it's not like I came down with cancer, or, you know, it was, you know, like every bad thing that's ever happened to me is because I brought it on myself. You know?
I really like that approach, man. I mean, you even read like the description of your podcast. I think it's like, I committed all these crimes and I was guilty of every single one.
100% guilty.
People appreciate the upfront, and then you tell the story and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I always, like, guys will start talking about, like we've been talking about, like how unfair the justice system is or something. It's like, I can only bitch so much about it because, like, I was really guilty. So, you know, how much can I really complain? You know, so, but, you know, that's, but whatever, we'll get into it.
So maybe we'll just start it right from the top at the beginning a little bit. So for people that aren't familiar with your story, if they haven't already pulled up Wikipedia at this point, you were the mortgage fraudster, pretty much, is how we would describe it. And when did you officially go down? Like 2006?
Yeah, late 2006.
Okay.
Basically, first part 2007. Yeah.
So you were what, like 35, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
37, 38. I was like 37, 38. God, man, I don't remember. I was 37
Mid-30s, late 30s.
When I finally got arrested. Like, I'd been arrested a few times, and I'd been on probation a few times. But when I finally, like, I was on the run, and I finally got arrested, it was late 2006, and I was 37 years old.
So let's just figure out where it all started. When did you first, I mean, was it in college, before college? Like, what was the first soiree you had into, like, doing something illegal?
That was the first loan I ever did was a bank fraud. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, like I graduated college, and I ended up, after a few years, I ended up as a mortgage broker. You know, I had a girlfriend that was a mortgage broker, and she said, you got to do this. So I ended up being a mortgage broker, and and it was bad. You know, you've done finance, and we even talked about this. Like, you basically work for nothing. Well, as a mortgage broker, like, there was no salary. Like, you're going out, you're getting clients, and you're getting them a loan. Yeah. Right. So how do I make money in the meantime? So I basically ran up my credit cards, stopped paying my car payment. I mean, I was like months behind on my bills, and I'm working on 3 or 4 loans. And my very first loan, I'm about to send it off, and the chick that I was doing the loan for had been 30 days late on her rent at one point. And so when my manager got the file, before you sent it to underwriting to get approved, she went through the file, and she took one piece of paper out and set it to the side and went through everything else. And she goes, "This looks great." And I go, "Well, what's up with this?" She goes, "Well, I don't think you looked at this." She goes, your customer has a 30-day late. She was 30 days late in the last 12 months, let's say. And I was like, and that's a deal killer. It's over. She's not getting a loan. Like, the bank's not lending you money if you're 30 days late.
Right.
You can't. Right. So she said, so, and I was like, oh my God. And she goes, I go, what do I do? And she went, well, what I would do is I would white it out. And she pulled out some white out. You remember the old one?
Yeah.
And she goes, I would white it out, wait for it to dry, make a copy, let me look at it, we'll put it in the file and send it off. And I was like, well.
So she told you to do it?
Yeah, she told me to do it, yeah. And I went, well, and I said, well, what happens if they call? She goes, well, they're going to call. She goes, if they call at all, they'll just ask them if they filled it out. They're not going to say, hey, did she have any 30-day late? She goes, they don't need to. They have the document in front of them.
Holy shit.
And I went, what if they catch it, though? What if they do? And she goes, I said, that's fraud. I could go to jail. She goes, you're not going to go to jail. You might lose your job. She goes, but we'll just say that this is what they sent us. Like, she said, they just won't do it. She says, it won't go through underwriting. Maybe you get fired. And I was like, she goes, look, they're not going to catch it. She says, there's a ton of documents here. They don't call on everything. They're not going to, even if they call, they're not going to catch it. She said, look, nobody's looking for my truck. Cause I used to joke around I'm parking in the back because they're looking for my car,
Yeah.
like I was that broke. And she said, yeah. She said, nobody's looking for my car. And I went,
wow.
So I said, give me the whiteout. And I whited it out. I went and made a copy and put it in the thing. And I sweated for like 3-4 days. 4 days later, I got an approval. A few days after that, it closed. I got a check for like $3,500.
And you're in.
I'm good. The next guy that came in, that loan closed. The next one came in, the guy made like $60,000, let's say. I forget the amount, but like $62,000. But if he made like $69,000, he could get the loan.
So you changed it.
Of course, I changed the 2 to a 9. I changed a couple other numbers to make sure it worked out right.
Did it look good when you did that?
It looked perfect, bro. Like I have a degree in fine art, so
yeah,
that's why
that
Danny
helps.
always makes jokes. That's why people make jokes when they're like, well, you know, this guy's dangerous. He has a degree in fine arts. I always say that when they're like, well, how did you figure out how to make that? I'm always like, I have a degree in fine arts. Like how did you? Like at some point, I start making birth certificates. So I can get Social Security to issue me Social Security numbers to children that don't exist, so I can create synthetic identity. So
I did read that. Yeah.
Right. I start doing all these things, and whenever somebody says, "How'd you figure that out?" I always go, "Bro, I have a degree in fine arts." like I'm dangerous, you know. So it looked perfect. I sent it in, went perfectly fine. Next guy comes in, something's off. I start just correcting every document, and I got to a point where I was like, "Listen, if you walked into my place with a pulse, you were getting a loan. I was going to get you a loan." Like, if guys would come in, listen, they'd come in, they'd hand me forged W-2s and stuff.
And this is what, like 2000, 2001, 2002?
Yeah, 2000, 2001. So, well, probably 1999 at first, later part of 1999. So then 2000. And, you know, people would come in. I'd have customers come in and give me a fake, like, W-2. And I catch it right away. I'm making these fucking things. So I know.
Yeah, you knew.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had them to where
And what would you look for? Like when someone gave you that?
You know, when you start making copies of copies, like the drum on a cheap printer, the drum, when you make a copy of a copy, any lines start to get squiggly.
Right.
Like straight lines start to bend. And the more you make it again, it bends again. Next thing you know, you got these wavy lines. So it's like, obviously this person's
That one's easy for you to catch.
Yeah.
Very easy.
Or, you know, sometimes they're not lined up correctly. Or I've had people use font, like the font's off. Like this is Arial. And you use like this is like Times Roman or something. Like this isn't even close. Then you completely change it. Or I'd pick up the phone and I'd go, so these are your W-2s. And they're like, yeah, those are my W-2s. And I go, and I'd pick up the phone and I'd call the phone number. And like some woman would answer, hello? I'd go, hey, is this AAA towing? And be like, oh, yes, AAA towing. And I'd be like, is this your mom? Bro, and I go, okay, thank you. And I hang up. I say, listen, bro.
You came to the right place.
Yeah, you bumped into the right guy. Like now I understand. But then again, what's so funny about that is then I would be like, they'd be like, man, bro, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, don't call me back. No, you're getting a loan. Like the fees across the board just went up, but you're getting a loan.
No, I got you.
It's funny, that same guy, the AAA towing, I forget what the name of the company was, but he's like, well, I said, make sure your mom answers it correctly from now on. And I remember I called like 2 days later. I just randomly called saying, hello. And I was like, is Tom there? Oh, AAA towing. And I'd be like, listen, by the third time I called, I said, listen, we're just going to change the phone number. I'm just going to answer it myself. Like I have a bank. I have like 5 or 6 cell phones. I have, back when they had, you could get voicemail that was connected to a pager. So I got like 8 pagers.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Oh, no, well, you were a child. You weren't even probably
I was like 5.
Yeah. So, but you could get like a voicemail. People would call and leave a voicemail and they'd page you. They were pagers.
No shit.
Yeah. So so you could put any voice on there and they would, hey, so-and-so, we're currently assisting other callers right now. And then so it would beep in my drawer and I'd pick up and I'd call and check the voicemail and then I'd call back. Hi, this is so-and-so from whatever, whatever the business is. So, and then I start incorporating different corporations, or I'm getting tax ID numbers from different corporations and I'm registering the phone numbers in the business directory. And I mean, I'm getting, as time went, I got more and more creative. I mean, I got to a point where I started making like my own banks. Like I was making online banks. You know, just
like names, like making up names.
Yeah, like a Bank of Ybor or the Southern Exchange Bank of Clarksville.com. And
did you have a website for them?
Yeah, of course. I have a website. I've got my own color, front and back color bank statements. I've got cards. I mean, I've got everything. I got envelopes, everything. I had a CPA that, not a CPA, she was just a bookkeeper, but she would do 1040s for me. So if you had, let's say you were a plumber and you said you made $12,000 last year, and the guy would be like, yeah, but really I make this much money. You know, and I'd say, okay, well, you have good credit. And so I'd go take his taxes and I'd say, I need this guy to make $120,000. Right now he's making 10 or 12 or 15. He's showing
How does
50.
she make that happen?
She'd change the W-2s. I mean, I'm sorry, she'd change the 1040s. She'd redo 2 years of 1040. She'd do an up-to-date, year-to-date profit and loss. And then I'd make sure the phone number was registered in the business directory, and then they'd accept it. Back then they would accept that.
Did she have a degree in fine arts too?
No, she didn't, but she was a bookkeeper, and she used to do taxes.
Know what she's doing.
Yeah, she used to. What else would? Yeah, it was nuts. So I mean, I was doing that for a while.
But
that's how it started. Sorry.
You make that first 35 though, that first 3,500.
Yeah.
You sweat it out for a few days, and then, like you said, you just started doing it on all of them after that. Was there like a recognition once that loan went through and you saw that money hit your account that you're like, oh, I want to do that again? Where you also said like, oh, we're going to go full legal? Or was there just full steam ahead, you see the money coming in, let's roll?
No, I mean, to me, not that there's a gray area, but what I was doing was illegal. So what I did was that's all I was doing. I would just alter, like you come in and I take your documents and you're missing one thing. I make that correction. That was like, it's a gray area. It's not, I'm still committing fraud. You shouldn't have got that loan. And so what people don't realize is that if you get $150,000 loan that you really didn't qualify for, well, I just got hit with that's $150,000 in fraud I just committed. Now you might say, well, you didn't get $150,000. Doesn't matter. I caused the bank to lend $150,000 on a house that they would not have lent. So now I just committed $150,000 mortgage fraud.
And you also get to close it, so you make the money. So
right, I make a commission.
Yeah,
and my commissions are they're large. If you had gone to Bank of America and been charged $1,500. I'm charging probably $3,000 to $4,000, maybe $5,000 for the same loan. And you would have gone to Bank of America and you would have gotten an interest rate of whatever, let's say 6%. I'm charging you 7.5%, because I'm getting points on the back of the loan, yield spread.
And you're also doing them a favor. They know it. So,
right. They know it. If I was lucky, they'd already been turned down by a couple people. Those were the people you really took advantage of, because they're not delusional into thinking that they have a choice. They've been turned down twice. So you're in a bad spot. I always hated the guys that you're like, bro, your credit sucks. You don't claim taxes. Your whole situation is fucked. Don't sit here and act like you can argue with me because I'm charging you a $4,500 broker fee.
Right.
That, by the way, that the seller's paying. Well, yeah, but that's a part of my loan. Well, go to Bank of America. Go to Bank of America with your taxes that say you made $15,000 and you want to buy a $300,000 house with the money that you have that you don't even have in the bank yet.
5 years later, they might have been able to do that.
Yeah,
maybe, but not then. Not then.
No, not then.
Not early on. I mean, it's just like you think about where mortgages are now. I mean, the times where we would even do that for a client and take care of putting that through Bank of America because I worked at Merrill. It's like there are so many moving parts to that, and it can be very annoying. And God, you roll your eyes every time, but it's like, fuck, I get why. Because you went from the wild, wild west to this.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, it's funny, all the procedures that they put into place now. Talked to a mortgage broker the other day that was like, yeah, you can't do this anymore because of this. And I immediately looked at him and I was just like, yeah, you can. Here's how I do it. And I went through, I go, boom, 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 boom. It's an extra step, but because of that extra step, Now they 100% believe it. And the guy's like, holy shit. I was like, and he was like, I never even thought that. Right. That's the problem. That's the whole thing. That's why you're a normal broker and you'll never have to go to jail. Good for you. Like that's that. Like you're saying, no, you can't do that. Right. You can't. You used to be able to do it. This is how you can do it now. And thank God you're not even in the ballpark of being able to figure it out, because the truth is you could end up in jail.
Yeah.
And which is what happened. So I continued on doing that. And
yeah, the growth of what happened with you.
Yeah,
That's what's wild.
Well, I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse. Then I ended up opening my own place.
And what year are we talking about here?
I would say I opened my own place in 2000, like within a year. So
now, did you have a wife and son at the time?
I was married and I just had a child. Like we got married, most of the people in my family get married because, someone got pregnant. So, we're Catholic. So they get pregnant and you're like, oh, like, I guess we're getting married. So I got married to, I can't even say, I talk to her all the time. Like I talk to my ex-wife all the time. She'll kill me.
That's good, at least.
Oh, yeah. No, we're good friends. Like she came to see me the whole time I was in prison.
Really?
Yeah. And I know her husband.
And you had been divorced and everything too before you went to prison.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah. No,
divorced.
we were done. No, her husband's a great guy. Listen, talk about her husband. He's doing hard time, bro. I mean, he's been married like 20 years to this chick. I mean, I'll go back to prison. I'll go back. I would go back. She tough, bro. Tough.
Just dug a grave there for yourself.
Oh yeah,
but she was visiting you the whole time.
Yeah, but I don't know how he's hung in. He was a Marine. That's what I keep equating it to. Well, you were in the military. You're a Marine. You're a much tougher person than me, so you could handle it. But even him, she's broke him. She broke him along. I said to her one time, I said, he's like a beautiful stallion you've broken. She's, I didn't break him, okay? He just knows his place. And I was my God. Oof. And she's like, don't act like it. Did you know what I mean?
I don't want to jump on the bandwagon here, but damn, I feel like I got a full picture of that.
Oh my God. Listen, just talk about, when we got divorced, I mean, just beat me down. I'm giving her everything. Just let me leave with my clothes.
Did she know about this?
I mean, she'll say no. I had no idea. I'm like, I think you almost convinced yourself of this at this point. So, yeah. So I was married to her, and I had a son, and I would say, so I'm committing fraud.
Do you think that played a role, though? That's my question. Like, do you think, because you said I was behind on my bills, they were going to steal my car out of the back lot and repossess it. You were worried about that, and you're trying to make money on an all-commission job. Do you think a part of you is thinking like, oh, I'm getting married, I have a kid on the way?
Well, at that time, I wasn't getting married. When I first started.
So when it first started, that wasn't a thing yet?
When it first started, was the money was it part of it? Was it a factor? Yeah, it was a factor, but let's face it, I also think that part of, honestly, that's to me, that's justification, because the truth is that, I always like to say, look, under the right situation, under the right circumstances, anyone will commit a fraud or a crime. Anyone will commit a crime in the right circumstances. And some people say, no, I would never do that.
Define crime,
you'll break the law,
like jaywalk,
like stealing. You'll steal under the right circumstances. You say, no, I would never do that. Really? Because if you're living in your car with your 2 kids and you have no money and there's a loaf of bread on the other side of the door in a Publix, I don't know if you have Publix, in a supermarket.
Not up here, but I know Publix.
You're going to grab that bread because your kids live another 3 days on that bread. So
right.
The only difference between, that person and me is my threshold's lower. So I was going under. I didn't want to move back in with my parents. My father was an asshole, so I, desperately did not want to put myself back in that situation. So in part, I would say it's justification. I'm trying to justify why I committed crime when most people they just wouldn't. They would say, you know what? I'm going to move in back with my parents. I'm just going to close legitimate loans. I'm going to put in the time and the effort, and I'm going to build a clientele base, and I'm going to do it the right way. Like, that's a good citizen. That's a good person. I wasn't that person. And that's the bottom line. So when I say, I needed the money. I did need the money, but the same you would have needed the money, probably would not have broken the law.
Right.
I did. For me, my threshold was different. I desperately didn't want to disappoint my father. I didn't want to be an embarrassment. I wanted to impress him. There were all kinds of other things that were a part of that. And what it really boils down to is I made that decision based on pride. And I always say this, I tell this to the chick that I'm dating, to my girlfriend all the time. Every bad decision I've ever made was based on my pride. Every single one of them. And I mean, listen, tell you one thing.
But you didn't recognize that at the time.
Oh, of course
this
not.
Is way after.
At the time, I desperately need money. Oh, no, this isn't until later when I wrote, I was in prison, I started writing, I wrote a memoir. And you have to kind of do you have to start looking at yourself, self-introspective,
right.
Where you have to kind of really dig down. And I read several books on how to write memoirs. And one of them was about trying to find the things in your past, in your youth or in your childhood that created the person that you were, and try and I remember thinking, well, I had a fine childhood. I had a great childhood. Yeah, I did have a great childhood compared to my cellie who his mother thought he stole something from her one time when he was like 7, and she took an iron and burned his hand with it. He still had the burn mark. Like, yeah, Jesus. I had a dream childhood compared to that guy.
It's a good perspective.
But looking back, no, my father was an alcoholic. My mom was an enabler. My dad was a binge drinker. He was belligerent. He was rude, talked down to everybody. He was a narcissist.
Was he successful?
Super successful.
Really?
Super successful. Yeah, absolutely.
So he's functioning in that environment.
And took a ton. He was a State Farm manager, worked for State Farm Insurance, and took people that were driving, beat up Volkswagen Bugs that 2 years later are driving $100,000 Mercedes. I mean, he's making people, turning them into great salespeople. He was a great salesman.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, he was a great salesperson. He was a great manager, and that's how he managed me my whole life. But the truth is, I was a disappointment to him. So I did not want to move home.
So this is very, very interesting, because you said two things even before that clincher right there a couple minutes ago, where you said your dad was an asshole, as you just outlined why.
Yeah.
Happened to be a successful asshole, but he was an asshole, had problems. But you didn't want to, the reason your pride got in the way is because you didn't want to move home, because you didn't, and as you just put it, you didn't want to be a disappointment to him.
Right.
And I'm always so curious about this, because I'm lucky. Like, I have a great relationship with my parents. They're great people. Like, they're just kind of your normal good people. There was never any problems between me and them growing up. So when I talk with people who there was a relationship problem or something like that, I'm always wondering what makes you feel like you have to live up to someone who you don't like, or not even don't like, who you don't respect.
No, I had great. I think that's actually the opposite. I had amazing respect for my father.
Really?
I did not like him. As a person, I did not like him. You know what's funny?
Why'd you have respect for him?
He was super successful. And you know what he taught me when I was growing up? And I talk about this in the book, which is something that I never would have talked about had I not written that book.
Sure.
Because I never would have looked at it, because I'd always denied it in myself. Just never took the time to really look at it. What he taught me was this, was that if you make enough money, you can be a complete fucking asshole to everyone. And they will accept it. They will cater to you. They will enable your behavior, and you can basically boss people around and be a complete dickhead to everybody. And that was my dad.
He told you that?
No, but that's what he taught me.
Right.
By watching him. You can treat women badly. You can talk bad to my sisters. You can talk bad to my mother. You can talk to other men like they're practically fucking dogs, even though they could beat your ass.
And you wanted to be able to do that?
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to be just like my dad. Definitely wanted to be like my dad.
Wow.
I respected my father. Everybody respected my father. But the truth is, as you get older, you start to realize you're kind of an asshole. Like, you behave one way that you would tell me not to behave. Like if he saw me mouthing off to my girlfriend, he'd say, hey, you don't ever talk to women like that. They're like, what are you talking about? You talk to mom like she's a dog. You talk to my sister like she's a dog. You're calling my sisters, whores and all kinds of names.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Right. And it's like, so which isn't the way it works. Your parents are doing drugs and telling you not to do drugs. You're going to do drugs.
Right.
The difference is like, I don't drink. I've never drank.
Really?
Never drank because this guy that I idolized was a complete drunk. Like this guy, he would be sober for 3 months and go on a 2-week binge. This is what a good, and because you've been in the corporate world.
Yeah.
This is what a good salesman he was. Always in like the top 10 in the nation. Always the top in the region. He was always the top salespeople. He has like 25, 26 agents. They're always part of what they call like the millionaire club. They always win the trips to Germany, to around the world. Yeah. They're always winning those trips. He's massive. And State Farm knew he had an alcohol problem. They put him through rehab twice. And I don't mean some bullshit 10-day rehab. We're talking about 60 and 90-day rehabs. They sent us, the last time they sent our whole family to rehab. We ended up going to Al-Anon, where the whole time my dad's...
You had to live at rehab?
No, not live there. But he's living in a rehab for like 60 days. And we have to, the family's going like twice a week. We're going to Al-Anon meetings. So like, how did I end up in rehab? How did I end up having to go
as
to
a kid?
Yeah, I'm like 12, 13 years. No,
Jesus.
Actually, that's not true. I was 17. I was 17. I
Either
remember.
way, yeah, you're not.
But it's like, how am I? And my mom's like, State Farm, they want us to go. It's like, what are you talking about? How did I end up here?
Because he makes some money, so they're gonna protect their asset.
They take him back. They put him back in. Boom, he's doing great. He's kick ass. He's sober for a year and a half. Bam. Has a relapse. My mom covers it up. She's telling people he's sick. Great enabler. And love my dad to death. It was like, oh God, what is it? Where the what is that? What was her name? Where you protect your God, I can't believe it. It's is it Stockholm syndrome? Where you?
I think Helsinki syndrome. Is that it? It's one of
one of those. Yeah, it's funny because that's exactly what I always say my mom had. Like she loved him. She thought he was wonderful. She thought this. She thought that. And it was just Stockholm syndrome. It was just like, what are you doing? But then he's paying all the bills. She's got a brand new car every year or two. They go on vacation. She's living an amazing life. And periodically he's a complete douchebag. So, and it was just like that for all of us.
What's the trade-off? I mean, that's right. What it is for a lot of people. It's just you have a little bit of a what would appear as a contradiction there that was actually good for you on the one half, where it contradicted, where you recognize that his alcoholism was something that I guess could potentially be genetic, and you're like, well, I'm never going to touch that because I never want to be like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you recognize what that made him in that environment, right?
Right.
Being on alcohol, being around the family, being abusive. But you didn't make the same recognition for how he treated people and what he got. You just saw the level, the stature in society, and you're like, well, shit. State Farm even paid for his rehab twice. That's how much power he has. Yeah. So I want that.
They oh yeah. I was just yeah. Listen, bro. Like I'm borderline an asshole, sober. What's alcohol going to do to me? And I saw what it did to him. I mean, that's just so. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I did not want to move back in there. I did not want to move in the house. I didn't want to hear him bossing my mom around. I would have done anything to not be there. So, I usually just kind of say, yeah, I needed the money, and I move on. But you just had to go all in. And so that's why I usually, because I tell these stories. Like if you tell your whole story, the audio version of my book's like 10 hours long.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So
your life's a movie,
right? I condense it to the quick. I needed the money. I did it. Because people can understand that. I don't typically go into that whole thing. So yeah, but basically, yeah, didn't want to move home, didn't want them, I needed the money. So yeah, that's what I did. So I committed that fraud and continued to commit fraud whenever it came up. Not going out of my way to do it. I'm just doing it to get my commissions.
And these are at the beginning, it's simpler fraud, and not to like change it up here, but heavy fraud is when you're stealing someone's entire identity and doing something like that, like in my mind when I'm thinking of it. But what you were doing here was just changing W-2s, changing their data so they could get a loan.
It's a gray area.
Right. So you do that for it sounds like a year or two, then you open up your own place.
Absolutely.
So what happens once you get your full control?
I hire like six guys, which ends up being like 10 or 12 guys. I think I ended up like 13 or so guys at one point. And, we're...
Sales guys.
Sales guys, yeah. Brokers, mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
And they're all getting their licenses. Everybody's licensed. I'm an FHA approved lender, conventional lender, VA approved. Like, I mean, it looks totally legit. But I'd say 70, 80% of those loans are not complete fraud. They have fraud in them. I hate it. I got to stop saying that. I go completely fraud. They're not completely fraud. I'm going to get to complete fraud. Yeah. So, but yeah, they got some fraud in them. And now I'm quickly just managing all of these guys. They're coming in. Look, man, I got this guy. Here's boom, boom, boom. Here's the issue. I'm like, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. And I go through the whole thing. This. We're going to do this. Go have him get a cashier's check. What's his bank? Okay, great. I got some bank statements in the back. Here, I got these. So it's SunTrust or Sun? Okay, SunTrust. Okay, great. I'm going to redo the bank account, and I print out a couple bank accounts, send in the original. Like I know how to get around all the guidelines.
Were you using some of the fake banks you alluded to?
Yeah.
At this point?
Or
so you were already setting that stuff up.
Sure. Or what I do is so I had bank statements for almost every bank out. So let's say you're with Bank of America. So I had the bank statements, but they were just the paperwork.
Blank.
So they're blank.
How'd you get them?
I ended up whiting out several people's, and I went to Kinko's and I made them on the right paper and everything. And then I trim them down because bank statements are slightly trimmed down. So I don't trim them down right away because you have to run them through the copier. Right. So I then already have templates of what your normal bank statements look like. Your car payment went through, your this, that. So I go through what's his rent payment. Okay. And I change the rent payment, I change the car payment, I change a couple of things. I print out 3 bank statements. I print them out on the blank bank statements. I trim them down. I fold them up. You send in the original, and they won't call the bank. What happens is the underwriter will typically call you and say, "Hey, listen, you made the mistake of sending in the originals." Well, if they have the original, why would they call the bank?
Oh,
right. So I just got around that one. And if they do, they still...
Did they ever... Yeah, I was going to say, they had to do that sometimes, right?
I mean, even if they do call, the guy the guy wouldn't have the money in the bank anymore. Because by that point, I'd have told him to take the money out of the bank, put it into... So let's say the money's not coming from your bank account. Maybe the seller is giving you your down payment. So we're going to have the seller go get a cashier's check, make a copy of the cashier's check, deposit it into the bank or into the title company, have the title company write me a letter saying that they are holding the borrower's down payment in their escrow. They sent me a letter. They're going to verify, yes, we have it. I'm going to then show the cashier's check, but I'm going to put my guy's name on it. I'm then going to show the bank statements where he had all the money in the bank and he took it out. I'm going to show the transaction where he removed it. And now if they call and get an average, the average actually is probably there or pretty close to.
Wow.
So there's just nothing for them to get.
It,
right. So it's everything is supporting the story. And you send it all in plus the originals. I just got around the guideline. So
if you fuck up, I'm just thinking about this out loud because I don't.
Right.
I never did this, right? I'm not in there doing it. And I know it's like anything else. You get good at it, things come quicker. But like if you fuck up one thing.
And what are they going to do? They're going to call me? They're going to call me and say what?
So you were never worried about that?
No, they would call me. What would they say?
We caught you?
You caught me doing what did you catch? And they go, do you know what they would say? We called the bank and the average doesn't match the same average. Or really they wouldn't because who knows how bank statements averages come out. You know what I mean? Like the bank statements say this. Or if they said, hey, we sent these to the bank. Something didn't look right, so we sent it to them, and they verified that these are not the statements. Are you serious? Are you telling me that my customer gave me fake bank statements? But they were originals. I saw the originals. No, we have the originals, Mr. Cox. So what are you saying? I'm saying he made them look like originals. My God, he's good. What am I going to do? I'm not going to say, you got me. My God, are you telling me that a guy that works at a tow truck company did this? That's insane.
But I'm saying if it happens multiple times. One time I could see that, maybe 2 times. But like if a bank's calling up Mr. Cox, the mortgage broker.
That's the 3rd customer that's done this. It sounds like I'm not going to admit it. And what are they going to do? They're not calling the FBI.
That's what I'm saying, though. You don't think some of them would hang up the phone and be like, all right, this guy's up to some shit.
Call the FBI. Like, I'm not worried. You're going to go to the customer. What's he going to say? Oh, I didn't do it. Really? Because you're the one who was going to benefit. He's the one. They're not going to continue. Look, first of all, they're not catching them. And the few times that I got caught, like, I've been caught red-handed. And
by other banks and stuff.
Listen, I was caught one time by a bank in Chicago called Pinnacle Bank Corp.
Guys, I keep telling you this every week, and I'm going to keep telling you this every week until you do it, but you have got to get an 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover if you haven't already. The 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, quite simply, is the greatest piece of sleep technology ever invented in the history of this world, ever. Ever. Let's say ever like a fourth time, just for a little effect. Anyway, the 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover comes in queen or king sizes. It goes on top of your current mattress, depending on what the size is, and it is wired directly into 8 Sleep's proprietary app that measures your sleep stages and a bunch of other science that I don't know anything about throughout the night, such that you get an optimized full sleep. So as I like to say, you'll sleep 6 hours and feel like you slept 8. So if you want to have more energy, I don't know, if you want to live longer too, sleep's very, very important towards overall health. You're going to hit that link in my description. You're going to see that it says 8 Sleep. You're going to go there. You're going to see that there's a promo code checkout where you use the code Trendifier. Very, very important. Use the code Trendifier, TRENDIFIER, and you can get $150 off your own 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover today. Supports 8 Sleep, supports the show, supports your health. What's better than that?
They caught us for a couple $1 million in bad loans. Because one of the things I used to do was this really is going to be 3.5 hours, 4 hours.
Oh,
so
yeah.
One of the things I would do is so when you get a canceled check, you know how they run it through and you get on the back, it shows it's canceled, everything. I made 24 months worth of canceled checks. They looked like they were canceled checks. And so I had templates from different banks. $700, $900. This is back when rent was not $1,500, $2,000. These were in Florida.
Now, how do you make one of those?
I mean, I would take my bank account, right?
Yeah.
My bank information, and I would the actual number. The routing number doesn't have all the routing information on the back just has like the date and the amount that went through, and then it has like a number on it, and then it has like your account number, let's say. So I would get the customer to write out 24 months worth of checks for, let's say, $700.
Right.
Right. This is if we're going to say it went to their bank. Typically, I had this go through another bank. So all I have to change is the account number.
Yeah.
So the routing number of the bank goes through on the back. So it's, let's say, $900. $900 went through on the 3rd on the 3rd, and then it has a routing number.
Right.
Okay, that's on the back. And
Yes.
there's some other weird numbers. Okay, and then on the front, it's the bank account number.
And that's what you're changing.
So I'm changing the bank account number for Bank of America, and I'm changing the upper left-hand corner, I'm changing your name and your address.
Now, how with your fine arts degree, how would you pull this off to not have it have any look completely convincing?
I mean, I would just cut and paste it on there and make a copy. Then now you're getting a copy of a copy. With the bank, the bank you're borrowing from is used to you're faxing them over. Or you're
True.
making a copy of it and you're mailing it in.
True.
So they sign it. The customer signs it. I've got 24 months of them. Well, so now it looks like this customer paid $900 for the last 24 months, and all those checks went through the bank. So they're good. And keep in mind, if they call the bank, if it's one of my banks, I'm verifying it. But they never call. That's the great thing about being the bank. You start to know they never call on this. They never call on that. So now you can even do it for Bank of America, for SunTrust, for whatever, because I know they're not calling. When they see a canceled check, that's as solid as it gets.
Right.
He gave us 24 months worth of canceled checks for $1,200 a month. He's been paying. Look. Oh, okay. They don't even think fraud. They go, oh.
Set.
Oh, yeah, cool.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah,
So-
and especially back then, they were only looking for just there's not anything wrong, right? Whereas today, they're like everything's wrong.
Yeah.
Assume it's wrong.
Right.
Very different psychology back then.
But even now, they look perfect. Like they don't think anything's wrong. And if you
Something
did-
like that
Right.
might-
If you
yeah.
did call, someone answers the phone. You go to the website, you call the phone. It's all legit. So I had one mortgage broker who would continually use the same checks and continually sent those checks to the same lender. Well, one of the underwriters at some point got like 2 of his loans at the same time.
Oh, no.
And was underwriting them both basically at the same time or within a few hours.
Damn it, Chad.
Yeah, exactly. LaFuente, Eddie LaFuente.
Oh, God.
And she jerk off. So she looked at him and she went, "Oh wow,
Same shit.
these look at, oh wow." Like the names are the only things that are changed on these two, right? So it's the same, $1,100, $1,100. The dates went through the same. Everything's identical. It's the same bank, everything. And she went, "Oh no!" She goes to the owner. The owner catches it. They pull all of his files over and pull like
every single loan,
every one of them. Like just an idiot. Like I've got 8 or 9 different banks. What are you doing? He's just laziness. It's just sloppiness. I can't stand sloppy fraud. So he ends up getting, it ends up being a couple $1 million. Like it very quickly, when you're doing $150,000, $200,000 loans,
sure,
it very quickly ends up being a couple over the
it's
course
worth
of a
a
month.
lot more back then too.
Yeah, listen, it's bad. It was bad. And so I get a phone call. First I get a phone call.
Now, this one, were you worried about this one? Were you worried like they're going to call somebody on this? Because it was so egregious.
It was egregious. So I was concerned, but I was ready to throw Eddie LaFuente under the bus. So I wasn't concerned that I had done anything. So the owner calls up. So Gary calls me up, and I'd gotten a heads up from the account executive. Called me and said, "Well, there's something going on. They're pulling files." I just got a phone call from one of the the secretaries or whoever, the loan processor said, "Oh my God, we just pulled this. You need to call Matt." There's a whole conspiracy of all these. So they called me, and I'm ready. I get the phone call. "Hey, Gary, what's up?" And Gary's like, "So, I don't know if you've heard this or not." He said, "But we caught this. There's a problem. You've got a broker there that he's using these canceled checks." And I go, "A rogue broker?" And he goes, "Yeah, a rogue broker." I said, "Okay."
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, I was like, and he said, "Because you don't know anything about this." I said, "Absolutely not, Gary." And he went,
I'm offended by the assertion there.
I've been offended. I've done the offended. What are you saying? So he was like, "Yeah, well, so he explains, we pulled all the files. We did this. And Matt, this is a major issue." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Have you seen these?" I said, "No, I have not." And he said, "Listen, I've been doing this 20 years. These things are amazing." And I was like, I didn't want to say, well, I have a fine arts degree. So I said, "Yeah." I said, "Listen, bro, I haven't seen them, but I'll take a look." And he goes, "Okay." He said, "Well, look, there's $2 million, and we've already sold $1 million worth of this. Has already been sold. There's $1 million of
it's
bad
already
loans
passed off to another holder.
Household Bank.
God.
Household Bank. Remember Household Bank?
Yeah. This was the whole system
HSBC.
with...
Yeah. So he's already sold these. He still has $1 million on his pipeline though. And he goes, "So is there still $1 million here?" And I went, "Okay." And he said, he said, "I don't know what," he said, "Matt, so you understand it's $1 million." I said, Gary, let's cut to the chase, bro. I said, if you're expecting at the end of this phone call that I'm cutting you a check for $1 million, it's never going to happen. That's just not going to happen. So I suggest we start figuring out how we can deal with this in a way that doesn't have me cutting a check for $1 million. And he went, and I think it was like $2 million, because let's face it, ethically, he should have contacted Household Bank and said, "Listen, man, we just sold you $1 million worth of bad paper." So I went, and he sat there and he goes, no, look, I get that. He said, "You don't know anything about this." I said, "Absolutely not." And he said, "That broker, what's going on with him?" I said, "He's packing it." He was actually sitting in my office staring at me. I go, "He's packing his bags right now." And he was like,
"What's Eddie doing right now?"
Yeah, he's just looking at me. Oh, he's hoping not to go to jail.
Right.
And I said, "Look, if we can not call the authorities or anything," and I said, "that would be great." And he goes, No. He said, "Listen, nobody wants the FBI looking through their stuff." He said, "What I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and pass these off to Household Bank. I just need you to give me your word that if any of these loans come back on me, that you'll help me get rid of the properties." Of course. What am I going to say? "Nah, you're on your own. Fuck you, Gary."
Yeah,
I'm like, of course, bro. I said, I
got you,
bro. So, and let's face it. Here's the funny thing: is like most people are like, "Oh, that's a fraudulent loan." Yeah, but guess what? Fraudulent loans, they perform. So, believe it or not, now do they perform as high as a normal mortgage? Probably
Depends
not.
on what the fraud is.
Right, but let's face it, probably not. But if it goes under 2 years later, what is the chances that the third bank that now owns this is going to catch it? Zero.
Yeah,
it's
like
almost never going to be
the difference between you writing up. You used this example earlier. The difference between you and writing up like a 62,000 a year income to 69,000 a year income for a loan versus somehow getting some dude who's making 15 grand a year into $1 million house. Those are two very different levels of what the fraud can affect on the final product.
Right. It's reasonable. Like he can make that. And I'm just doing it for at this point. I'm just doing it for commissions. Like
Sure,
I'm just doing it
just
to keep
money.
my place going.
Building the business.
So anyway, he says, okay, no problem. He passes it off, and maybe a week or two later, he actually flies down and takes me and several other brokers out to lunch. And he told me after he'd had a few drinks, he actually told me, look, I don't care what fraudulent loans come through, as long as I don't end up getting caught. If they can go through our underwriting department and they never come back on me, he's, man, I don't care if everything you send me is fraud.
Now, how much time did this guy do in prison?
No, he didn't do any time. He ended up bankrupting that company probably 2 years later.
Did he get prosecuted at all?
No.
Did he have to go on probation? Something?
No, what did he do? He just passed them through.
That's what I'm saying, though. See, this is like
he's just a banker.
It takes a village to burn everything down, but like you have to know he actively knew it was fraud. And this isn't $2. This one right here was a couple $1 million, and now the implication is
he's still taking our stuff. He's still taking our stuff. Send us some more stuff. Listen, the account executive was in like the next day, and she was like, "Wow, you dodged a bullet.
You're killing it, man."
so listen, we just came out with a new program. So yeah, you know what's so funny? You know the liar loans that everybody talks about.
Liar loans.
Oh, they Remind me. No asset, no doc loans, no documentation. You know the ones where they said
that was in the movie. What's it called? Big Short. I think.
Yeah, well that's
right?
Yeah, there were tons of those. You know how many of those I've done? Almost none.
Really?
Why would I? I can make the W-2s and pay stubs. I can verify your employment. I can verify your bank statements. I don't need to. I can get you the same loan with a higher LTV, lower down payment, lower interest rate, and I can jack your interest rate up higher and get more points on the back. It's to my benefit to create the documents and charge you a $7,000 or $8,000 broker fee than have you go through a liar loan program and charge you $3,000.
What's really bizarre is that if you think about where the business went ahead of the housing crisis, like in those prime years, like call it 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, to where, you had these type of loans where people just walked in, oh yeah, we'll give you a fucking house with a jumbo loan and all that, adjustable loan, because then they wouldn't be able to pay, and that's what crashed the whole market. If you had been getting into this business, maybe, because you said it was like 98, 99, something like that, if you had gotten into the business in like 02, 03, you probably would have never, that manager probably never has to say, change that. You're probably just going to get that guy a loan.
Well, I was still doing loans up till late 2003.
Sure, but I'm saying you were already deep into also changing shit and getting the big...
Yeah.
The ship had sailed at that point, is my point. Whereas if you had just come in when this wild, wild west happened, because, and I'll actually say righteously so, for most of them, the mortgage brokers from 03 to 07, like none of them got prosecuted or anything or looked at because they were just using the rules that they were allowed to use at the time. They were allowed to say like, oh, you make 40 grand a year, here's your $1.5 million house, because they could. It was open, whereas fraud is fraud, right? Like that's always going to be a crime.
Right. Well, those guys were saying, some guy who was making $40,000 a year, they were saying he was making $300,000 a year. They were lying and saying he's making $300,000. And so, he's getting he won't get a 95%. He's getting a 90%. But he's got a 750 credit score, so we're going to lend him 90 or 95% of the loan, and he's got the down payment. So we're going to do it, even though he can't prove that he can actually make those payments.
And what was the term for that loan again? You said
we called them liar loans, but they call them like no asset or no verification loans. Or they call them stated income programs. I think that's the term they typically use, stated income programs. We just state what the income is.
Gotcha. But like the one that you were talking about with the $2 million in outstanding loans, that was obviously with a real bank and all that. The banks that you invented, though, this is what's fucking with me. You had websites for them. What were some of the names, for example, that you would come up with?
I mean, there was really only, was there 2 or 3? It was Bank of Ybor was one. Because there's a place in Tampa called Ybor City. So It's called Bank of Ybor. I think there actually is a bank in Ybor now. And then there was Southern Exchange Bank. God, I think there was one more that had some weird name. But I think we only used it a couple of times. Like that was towards the last few months.
So I guess the question is like,
was it Columbia Bank? Or there is a Columbia Bank in Tampa, but we always did them so they were similar, kind of close to the banks that were there. Like there was a Southern Exchange Bank. Ours was Southern Exchange Bank of Clarksville. So it was very small, only had 3 locations.
So that's my question. Like there's a database. I'm thinking in back then terms, I wasn't around, but like I got to assume there's a database of registered financial institutions and whatever. So all someone would have to do is type in Southern Bank of Clarksville and there's nothing there.
That actually happened with the Secret Service. When I got caught, they actually had done that. They subpoenaed
which was easy.
To subpoena?
No, I'm saying like that was an easy catch for them at that point. So they're like, let's just check it.
Yeah, but they actually thought the bank existed. They were looking for funds that were missing. They actually thought the bank existed. They didn't realize that everything was fake. It was during my debriefing when I had to tell them that the bank was fake. And they were like, no, it's in the registry. And I was like, yeah, there was a Southern Exchange Bank of Clarksville, or a Southern Exchange Bank. It had been sold to like Bank of America or SunTrust or something.
Shit.
So the number, the number was still there. And so they actually looked it up, and I go, "Who'd you subpoena?" And they go, "Well, there was an address." They said, "We haven't gotten anything yet." I said, "You're not good. Guess what? You're not gonna."
Wow.
So, and they said, "I called the number," and I was like, "Really?" Because by the time they'd actually interviewed me, it had been months, and I was like, "Really?"
Who answered?
I said, "Who did?" I said, and you. He goes, "I've left several messages." I said, well, "I haven't paid for it in months," and so he actually took the phone out and called it and went boo doo doo like it. And I said, yeah, I told you I haven't paid it in months. He's like, I can't believe it. I've been leaving messages. We subpoenaed them. Like they weren't returning their calls, and they thought it's because we're the Secret Service and they don't want to deal with us. Like he's like, sometimes people just ignore the calls if they get called from the FBI, and the institutions just won't answer. They won't return. And they're like, well, we don't have to return their call unless we get subpoenaed. So we subpoenaed them.
This is such a foreign concept to me because like I can't, knowing the rules that I had to know, like I can't even imagine something like this getting 24 hours through without someone sounding the alarm on it. But like inventing a fake bank, you would change the names a little bit and then boom, you have an answering service, you're done. And now you get to say that, I guess you were using them to say like, oh, money came through here that never did. And then you'd tie it somehow to real banks.
Well, or you had a down payment. So you have an actual down, like your down payment, when you have put down, let's say 10% on your house, you can't just say, oh, I had the money in the bank. They go, okay, well, we need it. And it has to have been there for 60 to 90 days, depending on the program. Right. Well, these people don't have their money. Like usually my people were buying a house and the seller was giving them their down payment to get the loan, to get them to, so they can qualify for the loan so I can get my price. If I'm selling you the house for $300,000 and these people don't quite have $15,000 to put down, they've got 10. Well, the seller will sometimes give them 5 just so they can qualify, get the 300. Now, instead of getting 300.
They would do that? The seller of the house would give money to the person buying it?
For their down payment, yeah. Totally illegal.
Yeah, but then how do they even get it? Then it's like a handshake deal, like you're going to give me that back, I guess.
Well, no, what I would always have them do is just put it directly into the title company, into their escrow account. Or you just get the cashier's check, you bring it the day of closing. So they get a cashier's check from, the remitter would be from the borrower. But keep in mind, they can go back to their bank and put it in their bank. So they get it, or even if they put their own name on it, it doesn't matter. I'll change it.
Just for people trying to follow out there, long story short is the money technically never leaves the seller. They just make it look like they're
right. They're not depositing the money in the bank account. Let's say they go get money orders, blank money orders. You can get $5,000 in blank money orders, and then you send me the copies of the money orders. Just make copies of them, send them to me, and I fill them out from my customer.
But
so now when I make copies and send them to the bank, they think there's 5,000 in money orders that were that my customer has, even though they're still blank money orders. They don't get the real money orders.
I guess the only open question there that I still am not sure about is the fact that you're representing the buyer, right? Like you're the mortgage broker.
No, yes,
or are you representing both?
I'm representing the buyer.
Okay, so then the seller, you're just the guy representing the buyer, and you would just be able to convince the seller like, oh, hi, I represent client X who's buying your home. You're going to do this, and they would just do it?
typically the real estate agent was involved. But even if there was no real estate agent involved, and I have a conversation with you, you believe it. You can talk to.
Yeah, they wouldn't know, right?
Well, first of all, it's one of two things. Either I'm telling you, listen, this is what I'm going to do. He doesn't have the money. Boom, boom, boom. Here's how he can qualify for the loan. This is what I need you to do. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. This is how it goes through. Here's why. I explain it. Like, my sales technique for anybody isn't bullshitting you. It's laying out, it's educating you on how it's going to work. And that way like if I was selling cars, I'm not going to do the high pressure. I'm not going to hype, well, you need this. I'm going to say, look, this is the reason this is the best car for you. And I am going to explain why. You're either going to accept that explanation or go somewhere else. That's it. Like, I'm not going to hype. There's no high pressure. I'm not pressuring the sales person, the seller. Here's what. He can get this much money. He's got this. He's got this. We need $5,000 from you. Well, that means that I'm not going to make $300,000. I'm going to make $295,000. That's right. If you want, we can jack up the sales price by $5,000 and we'll cover that down payment. But now you have to come up with $5,000 and an extra $100.
You're basically being transparent by not being transparent, but making it seem like you're transparent.
Right. Well,
at the end of the day.
Well, here's what I'm not doing. I'm not telling them, oh, by the way, this is complete 100% fraud. But they know. They know.
You think they would know every time?
I'm not
like the seller.
If they said to me, hey, listen, man, like I think this is fraud. But you know what almost never happened? They almost never said, hey, this is fraud. Almost never.
That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of people kind of goes above, because these are numbers. You're switching things around. There's a lot of people who are just like, okay, all right, sounds good. So like the people who did say, oh, this is fraud, what'd you say to them then? Okay,
I'm going to give you an example right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I had
hello, sir. I'd like to sell my house.
Well, no, I actually, okay. So this was something where I didn't even ask the person. I'm going to give you a real example where the guy found out the whole thing was fraud. He found out this woman,
seller.
He found out that the woman buying his house did not work where I said she worked. He actually got.
So you've changed her job.
I changed her job. So because she had like multiple jobs and she was currently working at like Walmart, and didn't make enough money to qualify. So I said she worked at this other company and she'd been there 5 years. I gave him W-2s and pay stubs. Okay, fine. That's a done deal. I've already verified it. He's upset because he feels like the title company's charging too much. So he calls down there and starts arguing about how much money they're charging. During the course of that, somehow or another, the title person ends up telling him they have already received the package, none of it's going to change, this is the way it is, and ends up mentioning that, one of the reasons the fees were so high, she was going through non-conforming, getting a non-conforming loan. She wasn't getting a loan through like Bank of America. She's getting it through a subprime company. And he's like, why are these fees so high? Because we had him paying the fees. Well, and she explains why. Because of this, because of this, because of this.
He had to pay the fees?
I made him pay the fee. Like you've already agreed to pay up to $5,000 in closing fees. She doesn't have the car closing costs, but I raised up the purchase price to cover it. Like, we're really just incorporating it in.
So he agreed to it.
He agreed to it.
It was just, you said up to 5,000. So if it's
$5,000, and he's 5, up, and for some reason he thinks he's going to call and talk them down. And it's going to save him some money. Why? He's coming out no matter what. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you already signed that.
He's a jerk off.
Yeah.
So while I'm committing fraud, I'm calling
two jerk offs here.
So yeah, absolutely. So he calls up and she goes, well, look, she this, and somehow or another she ends up saying she works here. She I don't know, she works here, and he's like, what are you talking about? She works at Walmart. No, she works here. No, she works here. I actually went to Walmart and when she signed the contract, I know I've talked to her. We talks about she's been there for like 8 months or something, and she said no, she's been here for 5 years. No, can't be. She just moved to the area. Like as it's starting to unravel, he's realizing like everything's got to be. What do you mean she just moved to the area from Brooklyn? What are you talking about? She's been here 5 years. She's been paying at the same place. She's lived at the no. She just moved. Her lease is up in 3 months or 2 months. And she's like, okay. She's realizing this is fraud. She reads off what's being said. She knows it's fraud. He knows it's fraud. She calls the title. The title person ends up calling the bank and tells them this is what this guy's saying. Something's not right. That whole loan's done. He calls up and tells me, look, I
got you.
This is a seller.
Yeah.
He calls up and says, listen, man. So he comes to where I'm at. He comes to my office. Tries to talk to me on the phone about it. I say, like, I'm not talking to you on the phone. Come to my office. Comes to my office, and he preached being a good Christian. He was a big guy. Like, he was flipping these houses, and she's a good Christian. And he's bringing all this up. Like, when first time I talked to him, he was telling me about being a good Christian. And he comes to my office,
bringing God into fraud.
Well, he comes into the conference room, and we're talking. He's like, yeah, they told me this, they told me that. And then I said, right. I said, okay, well, here's what I can do. I can take that loan and go to this other company, which has also approved her, and we can close in like a week. We'll go to another title company. The fees are probably going to be the same. And I said, don't call anybody. Don't this. That's what they are if you want to close the loan. And he goes, yeah, but this is fraud. I said, well, I don't see. First of all, I said, it has nothing to do with you.
Fraud.
I said, you want to sell the house or not? Well, I don't know how comfortable I feel about this. And I went, well, I said, I understand what's happening here. I said, you want to sell that? Oh, I do want to sell the house. I said, okay, well, can't you do this? Can't she starts giving me all these ideas? And I'm like, listen, bro, this chick, she was evicted here. She was here. I've done this. I've done all these things to get the loan to go through. You believe she can make the payments, don't you? Yes. You want to help her? Yes. She goes to your church? Yes.
Oh, no.
And I said, okay. I said, so you're saying you wanted to get the house. I'm telling you this is the only way to get it. Well, I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. And I said, right, but you're also flipping houses, and this is what you want to do primarily, right? Because you're trying to kind of transition from another job. He's flipping houses. You want to help get good Christians into your houses, right? And he goes, right. He said, well, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. I said, okay, let me explain something.
You hit him with religion for this.
He's hit me with religion.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. You brought it right back around.
Of course. Oh, not just that. With it. Not just that. I said, listen, and he goes, I need to think about this. I said, okay, well, I want you to think about this. I said, but while you're thinking about that, I said, I want you to think about this. I said, one time there's a guy one time there's a small town that's flooding, and there's a guy in the flood. I said, and as the town is flooding, he's standing in the church. I said, and the Coast Guard comes by, or I'm sorry, the Marines come by, and they say, hey, jump in the back of this truck.
God will save me.
Yeah,
through that story.
Jump in the back of the truck, the pickup truck. We're going to save you. And he says, no, God's going to save me. I said, then the water keeps raising. I said, he has to climb up on the top of the roof. I said, and the water raises, and a boat comes by, and it says, hey, jump. They go, jump in the boat. He goes, no, God's going to save me. I said, it keeps going. He climbs all the way up to the top of the steeple, and he's holding onto the cross. I said, there's a helicopter comes. They lower a basket, and they say, get in the basket. He says, no, God's going to save me. I said, and finally, the water keeps raising, and he drowns. And when he gets up to heaven, he says, God, why didn't you save me? And God says, I sent a truck, I sent a boat, I sent a helicopter. What did you want me to do? What did you expect? I said, what I'm telling you is I am your truck, I am your boat, and I am your helicopter. I go, if you want this loan to close next week, I said, this is how we do it. I said, otherwise, put your house back on the market.
He looked at you and said, amen.
And he looked at me and he said, well, if this is the only way. I said, it's the only way. And he goes, all right. And he got up and he walked off. And a week later, it closed.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.